got to think about what lights you up, what gets you out of bed every morning.
That's a good one.
And most of us don't get to necessarily do that work. Like that might not be your 9-to-5 job that you're excited about, but when you find those things that you are passionate about, like I always had music. I was always finding a way to, be in a band and squeeze rehearsal time in and do gigs and feed that creative piece of me. And you might be a super creative person. And even if you can look for ways in your day job to kind of bring that creativity in and just tap into that, I think that helps a lot. And I think for me, it was just finally getting to that point where life is short and we are not guaranteed tomorrow. And if I go out of here early and unexpected, I'm going to go knowing that I had a good time.
Oh my goodness.
And
See, this is what I was trying to say. This is what I was trying to say.
I'ma be who I gotta be. I ain't living in your fantasy. I'll be real if it's the death of me. I'ma be who I gotta be. And I don't care who you pretend to be. Cause I'll be real if it's the death of me. Yeah, liars are liars, they burning in fire.
Welcome to a special edition of the P.E.A.C.E podcast. I am joined as always by the best co-host anyone could ever have, Mr. Kenny Lowe.
What's up?
And Mr. Carlos Golightly.
Hey, what's up, gang?
But we have a special guest today that needs no introduction, but she's going to get one anyway. She is the head broad in charge at the Brassy Broadcast Company, where she produces podcasts for a number of clients. She's a songwriter, a keynote speaker. She's most known for using songs instead of slides to educate and entertain audiences. Coming from her, she said that this is what happens when you are raised on Schoolhouse Rock and VH1 Storytellers. Her keynote concerts include storytelling, humor, and original songs that leave audiences uplifted and recharged for whatever comes next. She is a wife, a change agent, and a person who is unashamed to be her and wants you to do the same. I want to welcome to the P.E.A.C.E podcast, Miss Jen Edds.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Yes. Welcome to the podcast. How are we today?
Fantastic. Even better now.
Even better now.
That's what we like to hear.
That's what we like to hear.
Introduction? Yeah.
Yeah, hold on. I do have to always say this. Is there anything that I might have screwed up from what I know? Is there anything that I might have missed that you want to clarify quickly?
No, that was all good.
Alrighty. So I want to start off this because it seems like it's pretty important to you is showing up as your full self. And a number of interviews that we've done so far, it seems like that's a big struggle for people, but it seems like it's a very important thing for you. So like, how are you showing up as your full self today, or maybe even in this season of life?
You stumped me already. Question one.
Question number one.
We're going deep right off the bat. I love it. I love it. I think that the way that I feel like I'm showing up is just putting myself out there. So whether it's showing up as, a songwriter and sharing songs that I'm hoping, maybe somebody else has felt this way. So I'm going to put this out into the world, even though it feels super scary. And, I'm in Indiana and it's Pride Month as we are recording this, and gay in Indiana is not always a great time. But still, I'm feeling the need to show up and say things and speak out and not be ashamed of who I am or not feel like I need to hide that. Like I'm done. I did that. It's no fun. It's no fun to leave, to not be able to express parts of yourself. And I've lived that life and I just not going to do it. I'm not going to do that anymore.
I'm so glad that you brought up Pride Month because, I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about that or not. I have heard and seen you talk about that a little bit. But Yeah, it's Pride Month. As we're recording this, it'll most likely not be Pride Month anymore once this comes out. But like, what does that holiday mean to you? Because like there are some holidays for African Americans, you know, whether it's February or it's Juneteenth. And I think that sometimes they maybe mean less to the people group, or they mean more. But like, what does Pride Month mean to you?
I think for me, it's mostly about celebrating the community. And because I've never lived my life where being gay is the most interesting thing about me. That is so far from the truth. And I think because, you know, I'm a Gen Xer and having grown up, especially like in Indiana and in this climate, I never wanted to talk. Like, I didn't even want anybody to ask me who I was dating. So I had to come up with other things that were way more interesting and other things that we could talk about. Yeah. But I feel like with Pride Month and the parades and the celebrations and the events, it's such a cool way for the community to come together. And that's one of the things I love, is this community is so supportive of one another. And, you know, for a lot of folks, it's their chosen family because their, you know, family of origin has disowned them or kicked them out or whatever that looks like. And, you know, you kind of just find your friends and find your family.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. Yeah. I don't think I've heard it quite that way before, but it definitely makes a lot of sense.
Well, and something else that I saw somebody post on social media recently is that Pride is a protest. We just protest with fabulous parades and concerts and events. I mean, who wouldn't want to come to this protest, you know?
Right. Do you, are you pretty involved? Like, is there you mentioned community a couple of times. Are you pretty involved with like a Pride community in Indiana? What does that look like? Unfortunately, I'm not too tapped into it. I have friends, I'm involved in it, you know, but only for my friend's sake, not actually first person. Yeah. So.
I mean, I did not go to the parade or the big event this year, but I was lucky enough. So I'm a musician and I play in a band, and there was an event Thursday of this past week that one of many Pride events going on. And so we got to play this great concert, and, you know, they had a ton of performers, and that was like getting out and seeing all my people. And it was great. Yeah. And they had us play early in the evening because, like, they know our people want to get home and get to bed. Like the people that come see my band. Like, we got to have these people home by 9:00. It's a school night.
That's hilarious. One more thing I want to ask, and I don't know, you can jump into this as much as you want to. We had a conversation where Kendrick introduced us to what's called the model minority, which I had heard nothing about it before. I'm not sure if you know about it, but it's pretty much how like the Asian, I think it's in Kendrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but is the Asian people group are seen as white most of the time when it comes to applications for college or maybe jobs or something like that. Is that right, Kenny?
It's basically a systemic racism of where like Caucasians elevated a minority race to use as an example group, so other minority groups can't complain. We're Asians are seen as white adjacent, and so whenever other minority groups can complain about like their hardships or like the system's putting them down, Caucasians can point to Asian Americans and be like, but they're successful and they're minorities, so you should be too. So it's so like we're always seen as the mild minority, but I'm curious where you're trying to go with this.
Yeah. So my question was going to be, do people see you as not gay and treat you as something until they find out? Or do people pretty much assume that from the beginning? Like, have you ever noticed a difference? For me, for example, if someone sees I drive around in a Jeep, if someone sees my Jeep, they probably don't assume that I'm going to walk out of the Jeep. So I have like a level of privilege while I'm driving in my Jeep. Have you ever experienced that?
I don't know. And I drive a Jeep.
Yes. Woo. I love it. Well, that's a good thing. Maybe you haven't then. Maybe you haven't. The reason I can point out that I have experiences is because I drove like a Pontiac Sunfire at one point that looks pretty beat up. I experienced classism, by the way, and I got pulled over all the time. Knock on wood. I literally have not been pulled over once in my Jeep, and I'm telling you that I've sped way more in my Jeep than I have in the Sunfire ever.
that's fascinating to me.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
like I said, we go ahead.
I probably have, and maybe just wasn't aware of it. I don't think it's necessarily like somebody's been mean to me or intentionally was like, well, we're going to be mean to Jen now. But it's probably happened. And I was just like going on my merry way and didn't pay any attention to it.
I love it. Good.
I also feel like society has become way more accepting. Like a lot of things that, because like if I think back to like, I'm sure if you guys think the same, like growing up, like going through high school, a lot of people were closeted, right? Because being gay wasn't like a very open thing. People were scared to be open. One of my best friends growing up came out when we were in college, and kind of what Jen was saying about how you have a chosen family because your family of origin kicks you out, like absolutely happened. And it's that's not an uncommon story, especially in Indiana.
Yeah.
But nowadays I feel like a lot more people are finding support and being able to embrace like their true self and being able to be themselves. Whereas I think like you go back 10 years ago, or it wasn't as accepted, and it was a lot harder. So I think like as society as a whole, like even though there's a lot of issues and flaws, I still think we've come a long way from 10 years ago.
Oh, 100%.
So I know that you have a vast number of skills. Let's just call it. Okay. You podcast, you sing, you play the ukulele. Am I right on that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And I think that you play guitar by your background. I don't know if those go hand in hand or not. How did you get into this, first of all? How did you get into music?
Piano lessons when I was 6, which I was terrible. I never wanted to practice. I never wanted to do anything. So I finally got to quit piano lessons. But then when I was in about the 5th grade, like I just wore my mom down. She was like, I'm done with this. But in the 5th grade or so, I was like, but I want to play guitar. And she's like, nope, we're not good. I've been to this. I know how this is going to go down. I'm not fighting you on lessons. I'm not going to, yell at you to go practice. I'm not doing this. I was like, no, please. Like, I promise, like, I'm really going to do this. So I feel like, convincing my mom to get me guitar lessons was my first sales job.
Right.
So there was my uncle had an old beat up guitar, and I was like, and the strings are like 6 inches off the neck and it hurts. But I'm like with my little hands getting it and showed her enough that I got a guitar, I got to start lessons, and that was it. Never, she would have to tell me to not practice or,
Wow.
Then when I graduated to electric guitar, it's like, turn that thing down,
That's cool.
But so that just kind of started me on the path to being a musician, and then, getting in bands. And I was a music and business major in college, and here we are.
This runs deep. Okay.
Yeah, it runs deep.
Is guitar your favorite instrument?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm curious to favorite instrument. And then also, what instrument did you learn the most recently? Or what was the last one that you learned how to play?
Uke was probably the most recent. I also play mandolin, and kind of depending on the day, my favorite changes. I've probably played guitar the longest and piano, but you pick up a uke and you cannot be in a bad mood. It just instantly shifts everything. You're like, I feel like I'm on a beach somewhere and I need an umbrella drink, and this is great. And it's just really, it's so easy to travel with and take places, and people see it and they're like, oh, they're just happy.
Yeah, honestly, every single time I see a ukulele, I think the same thing. Somewhere on an island, it has to be a beach, has to be a drink in the hand. You don't play a ukulele anywhere else. That's even if you are somewhere else, that's where you are in your mind.
That's where you, yep.
Yeah, it just kind of transports you.
Yeah. And what made you, I'm moving forward a little bit, maybe too fast, but what made you want to turn this, maybe it was the major in college, but what made you say, all right, I'm going to take this music and I'm going to take it to the corporate environment?
Well, it all started with the Nuns. How's that?
I wasn't expecting that. This can't be real with the Nuns.
Yeah. Well, so I'd done corporate jobs. Like my last corporate job was an inside sales position selling restaurant equipment. I don't even cook, which my wife was just amused by all of that. She's like, how can you sell this stuff? I'm like, I just talk to people. But I realized at some point as I was playing more in bands, I was like, I was not put on this earth to sit in a cube farm under fluorescent lights and talk to people on the phone. So I was like, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to figure out how I can use music in my life, get paid for it. She's like, okay, I will support you in this, but you need to get this figured out.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, I have a friend that was like, hey, I know that you can write music and do all this stuff. I'm friends with these nuns. And for Christmas, I want to gift them custom theme music for their podcast. Could you write it? And I was like, well, if you're going to write me a check, I'm going to figure out what podcast theme music for nuns sounds like. And I did. And that worked out really well. And that was kind of my introduction to podcasting. Like I'd listened to a couple podcasts, but this was 2013-ish. But they were thrilled with the music and they're like, hey, since you know how to, do this audio stuff, would you be interested in editing our podcast? And I was like, well, sure. I would love that.
I quit my job already.
Yeah. I'm open. I've got some free spots on my schedule. But like I said, I listened to a couple, but I had no idea how to edit a podcast. But I was like, I know audio software. I can figure this out. And that's just kind of what I did. They were my introduction into podcast production. And, here we are all these years later, and it's great. Wow. I can't imagine doing anything else, really.
Wow. What did you want to do? I'm always curious of this. What did you want to do when you left college?
I didn't really know. I knew I wanted to get out of this small town in Indiana where I grew up and move to Indianapolis because that's where all my friends were. And that was kind of as far as I'd really thought about it. And then I ended up getting a job and just stayed here and, then went to the next job and the next job. And then I was finally reached the point where I was like, I need to do something that lights me up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So where are we at now? What all do we have on our plate now? I know that you have a band, you're doing podcasts. Can you give us like a quick snippet of like, this is all that Jen has on her plate?
Okay. Yeah. So I go to jiu-jitsu class. I try to get there 3 or 4 times a week. And then I also do a jiu-jitsu podcast with my coach because I know nothing about jiu-jitsu still after about 4 years, but she's great at jiu-jitsu. I'm good at podcasts. So it works out really well for both of us.
Is this teaching people about jiu-jitsu?
It's kind of all of just the different things that we experience as we train. A lot of it, I feel like a lot of it is mental and, kind of mindset stuff and what it's like training, particularly as women, because it's still, there are more women coming to the sport all the time. And, going back to this idea of community, it's like, how can we get more people to, like, especially women, to train, and then how do we keep them coming back and how can we support them? And the podcast has been a really great way to do that. I mean, I've met people from all over the world that DM us like, oh, this was such a great episode. I was just going through something similar, and it's really cool.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's the podcast editing and all the other stuff.
I guess how did you, so I watched your video about should I start a podcast in 2023 and I really liked it because I feel like you say a lot of different things because you kind of take a jab at people who are like telling people, oh, you should just start a podcast just to do it. And I really liked your reasonings for like, oh, you really need to ask yourself, like, why should I start a podcast? Like, is that from learning from experience of like starting your own podcast? Is that what I feel like so many times, it's just like, I've thought so many times like, oh, I should start a podcast. And then your first point is like, don't worry about everything else that's already out there because it doesn't matter. And I feel like that's the most important point for a lot of people.
Definitely. And I will stand by that. I mean, I want people, if they're thinking about making the investment of the time and buying equipment and like really wanting to do something that's impactful, then be intentional about it. Don't just turn on the microphone and start talking and think, oh, people are going to want to listen to me have a conversation for an hour, even though it's totally random and we don't really have any direction and we can't really even tell them what the conversation is going to be about at the beginning of the episode. So they don't really even have a reason to tune in. I just don't understand that. Like, if you're going to go to the effort and expense of doing this, then do it, and do it with intention and purpose, and have a game plan for it, and know what you want out of it and what you want your listener to get out of it. Because I 100% believe that time is our most valuable resource, and I don't want to waste anybody's time, and I don't want anybody wasting mine.
Love that. Snaps on that. It's funny because we went through that in the beginning. Like, I had an overall vision of what I wanted for the podcast. But we were like, all right, we're just going to hop on and we'll do our episodes of, maybe a topic or two, but it was like no direction, because it started off at the dinner table and we were having really great conversations. But once you hop on here and it's recording, things feel a little bit differently. So I was like, wow, I was very arrogant to think that someone's going to want to listen to me just talk about myself for an hour, and I'm no one, or no one has context of who I am. So yeah, we course corrected a couple times and still are, because it's like, wow, an hour of these random dudes isn't doing anything for anybody. So yeah.
But I also feel like you've kind of got to do that when you start out, because you might think that it's one thing and the direction of it is one thing. And then you actually get into it and you start doing the work and you're like, oh, we thought it was this, but this direction feels a little better and people seem to be responding to this more. And I feel like it's one of those things where the work and the direction kind of reveals itself, but you've got to start doing the work first to figure it out.
Yeah. That's a good point. I feel like you can't box yourself in, and you kind of go, like, you can have a vision, but be prepared to like adapt. And if that changes, because I think one of your points that really resonated with me was how you said that the most common thing is you always think, how can I provide value to my listeners and to everyone else? And then you said flip that, and it's like, because it is an investment, it takes a lot of resources, and like you need to think about what is the goal for me, like what kind of value does creating a podcast get for myself? And I think that's something that maybe we I don't know, maybe I didn't think about when we started this much, because I feel like there was too much of a focus on like what are as our content, like what's going to be valuable for other people to listen to. But I had to turn around and ask the question, like, what do I want to listen to, or like what do I want out of this podcast? How do I want to grow from this?
And I think as I was just kind of listening to you talk here, I get like a sense of you are very, how can I describe it? Very deliberate and very like be here in the present type of person. So I think you're somebody who can really self-reflect and think about how you feel. And I think that I could be wrong here, but I feel like it gives you a lot of clarity in terms of like, what I want to do in the future, or at least I know that I'm passionate about, the vision that I have. So I guess I'm curious, when you were like, you said it hit you a while back to you, like, what? I haven't been showing up as myself. Like, if there was like something that you could tell someone who's not currently showing up as themselves, or like, can you think back to a feeling or like a conversation that you had with yourself? You're like, what? I've been doing this all wrong. And like, today is the day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is it. I need to start being in the moment. I need to start being deliberate. I need to start doing what's best for Jen. Like, was there a moment, or is there something that you could, speak to help people out that may be struggling with that, or may not even know that they're struggling with it yet?
Hey, what up? It's Leo with the P.E.A.C.E podcast. Hopefully you're enjoying the episode. If you wouldn't do me a quick favor, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit like. You've made it this far. Hopefully you're learning something. Peace.
I think you've got to think about what lights you up, what gets you out of bed every morning.
That's a good one.
And most of us don't get to necessarily do that work. Like, that might not be your 9-to-5 job that you're excited about, but when you find those things that you are passionate about, like I always had music. I was always finding a way to, be in a band and squeeze rehearsal time in and do gigs and feed that creative piece of me. And you might be a super creative person. And even if you can look for ways in your day job to kind of bring that creativity in and just tap into that, I think that helps a lot. And I think for me, it was just finally getting to that point where life is short and we are not guaranteed tomorrow. And if I go out of here early and unexpected, I'm going to go knowing that I had a good time.
Oh my goodness.
And
See, this is what I was trying to say. This is what I was trying to say. I was trying to explain this. Maybe it just came off a little harsh when I said it. But yeah, I love that though. Like I think we're so used to like, well, you know what? I woke up this morning. I woke up yesterday. So I mean, very likely I'll wake up tomorrow. And when we live like that,
it's true.
We take a lot for granted. I'll do it next week. I'll do that next year. I got big plans next year. Who promised us that? That's
Right.
really, we got to stop. We got to stop, having that mindset sometimes. So I really like that. I'm going to use the way that you worded it too. I need to adopt that. Maybe my way of wording things was a little harsh.
No, I think Jen said it in the beginning about like you want to be intentional with everything. And I guess like how do you practice that? Like how do you make sure that all of your actions and your intentions are intentional, like especially in the moment?
Well, it doesn't happen every day.
Yeah.
but you said it right there. You said practice, and it is a practice. One thing that I've figured out, whether it's through doing music or podcasting or jujitsu, these things are all practices. I mean, some of us suck at jujitsu, some of us suck at life, some of us suck at playing music, right? But we show up every day with that intention of, where can I get better? Where can I just get a little bit better today? Where can I try to go harder? And it like, especially thinking about jujitsu, one of the things that my coach just puts into our head all the time is, what's your game plan? She's like, what do you want? And I'm like, oh, what do I want? Does this translate to life off the mat? I get to choose what I want.
Yeah. What are you asking me here?
Yeah. It was, so one of the things that I did that I never occurred to me that I would ever do is, in February, I went on a jujitsu retreat to Costa Rica. Oh, wow. And I went for the jujitsu, but I really wanted to go when my coach said, you can learn how to surf. I'm like, oh, okay. A landlocked girl in Indiana is going to go and learn how to surf. That just always sounded so cool to me. So I was like, okay, sign me up if we can do that. But I was working with one of the coaches, and, I had this position and it wasn't a great defensive position. And she's like, you don't have to settle for something you don't want. And I was like, it was one of those things where I was like, what? I don't have to settle. Like, I can go and actually change where I am and change how I'm approaching this. And it's those I think that's one of the reasons why I love jujitsu so much, is it's those life lessons that I get from training that I'm like, oh yeah, I can do all these things. I don't have to settle.
Yeah. I love that you're hearing that, because I don't know if that's what they're actually saying or not, but the fact that you're soaking that in and you're running with it too, that's really cool.
I love that. It sounds like such a simple concept that really just kind of wakes you up. Like it's crazy sometimes. It's like the simplest things. Like that reminds me. I had like a company commander, and I remember like expressing him like, hey, things aren't going good. Super all over the place, sporadic. We need to clean up these operations, blah, 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 whatever the pain point was. And he looked at me and a group of people and he goes, guys, it's simple. And he goes, be deliberate. And I was like, guys, why didn't I think of that? Be deliberate. Little things like that sometimes, all you need is a gentle nudge though. Just someone maybe from the outside looking in with a different set of eyes that can just show you what you're missing. Love that.
Yeah. Is there anything you do outside of jiu-jitsu and music? or is that it?
Those are probably the two main like fun things that I do.
Not that that's not a lot. I was just curious because you got a lot on your plate already. You might as well pile some more stuff on.
I mean, it's summertime and we've got a pontoon, so I'm trying to get to the lake a lot.
Oh yeah,
that is high on the priority list.
Yeah, always something else, huh?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you have a podcast, but I know you do a lot of like coaching and stuff like that. I definitely want to get to a point where we're hearing some of your music. I don't know if you have one of your favorite songs or anything like that. Do you have a favorite song that you like to perform?
I do.
Is it like a go-to for everywhere, or is it like, oh, this is just for me?
It's the last one I wrote, so it's my favorite.
Oh, all righty. Are we going to be able to hear it?
Yeah. I'll grab the uke. So what inspired this was I'm doing a session at the She Podcast Conference next week. It's a virtual conference. It was originally supposed to be in person, but things happen. But the theme of the conference is undeniable. Ooh, and so I kind of wrote this song around that. But yeah, I'd love to play it for you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear it. Hey, you all are getting a free performance. You're welcome.
Right. Hang on. We're going to tune again just to be safe. Who do you think you are? Feels like a loaded question based on some objection to my identity. Who do you think you are? Based on whose perception? Maybe the better question is who do I want to be? Don't let someone else define you. I'm here to remind you that you can be whatever you want to be. There's no limit when you give it everything. You can be whoever you want to be when you show up undeniably. There you have it. Great. That's the favorite, the latest and greatest.
Love that.
That was good.
Oh my goodness.
How many times has that been performed?
Not a ton yet. Maybe. No, not a ton.
Okay. Peace podcast exclusive right there.
Vibe, yeah. I feel special now.
I feel like
didn't you feel transported to an island somewhere?
I do. Yeah. I gotta cut this off. I'm not in work mode anymore. I love it. What made you hop on a podcast and like start that? Like, how did your podcast start? I guess is my question. Was the motivation
the
behind it?
Podcast? Or...
No. You're the Brassy Broad.
Oh, because I'd been working with the Nuns, and I was like, this podcasting thing is really cool. And if I want to do more of this work, maybe I should start my own and really get familiar with the ins and outs of it. And just, I'm curious, and I wanted to know all the things about how it all works and how it all comes together. And that was really kind of the inspiration for that. And then I haven't consistently produced the Brassy broadcast. It's kind of been on and off. I've kind of done some different series and just kind of pick it up when I feel like I want to, or if there's somebody in particular that I want to talk about or talk to. But I really have we've been so good about consistently producing the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. I'm like, that's my focus, and that's okay because I feel really intentional with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And you're doing like coaching too. I'm assuming there's a lot of things that are pulling you away from the Brassy broadcast. We need some tips for the podcast, like the P.E.A.C.E podcast. So do you have
what are your big questions?
Yeah. Go Lightly Kenny. I don't know if you have any. One of mine is like, is there an SEO like thing that we need to be thinking about? Because granted, the name of this podcast is Peace. So of course there's going to be a million pieces out there for peace and love, peace and harmony, peace, so I didn't screw up because that's what the nonprofit is. But like, what do you suggest when it comes to naming your podcast or naming the videos that you put out?
I feel like there are a lot of different schools of thought on this. I mean, and take this with a grain of salt. I mean, we don't even have jujitsu in the title of our jujitsu podcast. It's called Beauty and the Gi. And I'm like,
okay.
Ooh,
that's
a good name.
I like that.
It's a fun name, but I'm like,
that's a fun name.
For SEO discoverability, maybe we should have worked jujitsu into that.
That's a really clever name, though. For
the gi, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
That was all my coach. And so I for discoverability, it's great to have the topic, or, if you're doing it for a business, have your name or the organization name in the title. So it's going to come up. But yeah, SEO is kind of out of my realm of like, I can help you make the thing and make it really awesome. Yeah. I am still working through the marketing piece of it because I feel like that's the $1 million question. But you can do all the marketing in the world and get people to press play. But how are they like, what's that experience like for them when they press play? Are you getting to the point? Are you telling them, what's going to happen and what to expect? Are you acting as the guide for them through this episode? And I think we get so focused on the marketing and kind of lose sight of, but it's the content, the podcast. Yeah. That content's got to be there and really has to support what you're doing.
Yeah. That makes sense. Like people, you're right. You can do all the marketing and get people there. But when they're watching, are they wanting to be there? Is it valuable for them to stay? Will they want to come back? Like marketing only does so much. So it's a real good point. I like it.
I think about it like a restaurant experience. You see a restaurant advertised and you get all excited to go in and eat. But if the food sucks or if the silverware is dirty or the service is no good, you're not going to come back. It doesn't matter how much they throw at marketing. Yeah. And you're not going to tell your friends about it. Or you are going to tell your friends, but they're not going to go there either.
Yeah, they're not coming back.
Yeah.
I guess like how do you structure your podcast? Like, do you go into it with like a set topic or like a set thing for each episode, or do you have like a theme? Besides jujitsu,
we usually do a set topic. A lot of times. Our topics come from our community and our listeners, especially if we get somebody that's asking questions. It's like, oh, we should talk about this. Or we're in some Facebook groups. And if you see a topic that keeps coming up, or if people have strong feelings about it, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And then we usually kind of map out some key points that we want to make. A lot of times we will also throw in like an on the mat tip this week, something you can try, or something to try off the mat that you've taken from the episode that you can try out in the real world.
That's awesome. How can people listen to Beauty and the Gi?
Well, it's in any place you can listen to podcasts. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible. It's also on YouTube. We do publish just the audio only version there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And I've been surprised that we actually have people that will listen there. I mean, YouTube is definitely getting more involved in the podcasting space. They've tried to do some things with podcasting, like with playlist. I'm like, I don't even get that. Why? It was working great. What we've been doing is working great. I will say this: if your goal is to build a YouTube channel, then don't put just an audio podcast out there, because it's going to kill your retention rate. But if you can take video clips and things like that, like those shorter segments, and put that on your YouTube channel, if that's something you're actually trying to grow and monetize, do that all day, because it's one of the best places for discovery. And that's where you're going to want to make sure that you're paying attention to your keywords and your SEO and making sure that, again, you're being intentional with how you're titling the episodes and the clips that you're putting up there.
Love it. Are you listening, podcasters, content creators? She's giving you all the juice right now. All the juice. Go Lightly, I'm talking to you. She's giving you all the juice. Go Lightly is about to be our star content creator on the podcast. He's going to be the one that's able to go and like actually produce something content wise. That's pretty big. He's got it naturally.
Nice.
It's funny because
why did they vote you for that?
Yeah, I was gonna say I disagree because I feel like we got Kenny about to drop a mixtape here.
Oh my gosh,
that's true. We got another artist on the line right now.
Yeah,
Kenny said he's coming out with an
there
album.
we go. Hey,
we got a collab.
Oil, you ain't slick, Oil. But before we, I kind of want to spin back a little because we almost grazed over this, and this is a big deal to me. Maybe you've been this way your whole life, but you just came onto a podcast. I've never met you. I don't know if Leo, Kenny's met you in the past, and you were able to come on and just play a song for us. I mean, effortlessly. There was no butterflies, no flutters. It was natural. You weren't nervous at all. We could tell. So how have you always been this way, or how did you overcome that? If there was a thing in terms of nerves or jitters, it sounds like you do a lot of speaking engagements and things like that. So is that just always been a part of Jen, or?
No, I've completely faked it. Even the Brassy Broadcast podcast name is the complete polar opposite of who I felt like I was at that time. It was like the alter ego. Maybe I can grow into that at some point. I did not sing until I was in my 30s. I didn't think I could. So I mentioned that I was a music major in college, and to fulfill the requirement, you had to participate in some kind of ensemble. So my ensemble was choir. I go to choir class the first night, and we have to sing for the director so he knows what group to put us in. I get done singing, and he looks at me. He's like, "Is that really how you sing, or do you have a cold?" I was like, "Oh." So I lip synced my way through 4 semesters of choir. Milli Vanilli's got nothing on me. So I did not sing until years later when I was in a band, and my bandmates were like, "Hey, we need you to add some harmony here and step it up a little bit." I'm like, I don't sing, because I didn't naturally, and I still don't always naturally hear the harmonies. So my bandmate would get my phone out. She'd sing my harmony part. I'd go home and I'd learn it. And what I found is once I got rid of that story in my head that I didn't sing, it's like, oh, well, this isn't so bad. And it got more fun for me. And then it got more fun for the audience because it was a better experience for them too. So once I just got out of my own way, it was like, oh, hey, I can do this.
I love that. So it was all in your head all along is what you're saying.
All in my head, all along.
Man, I feel like we can apply that to so many things in life. That is beautiful.
Hey, so were the songs, ironically.
100%.
So are the songs.
Sometimes we're our own worst enemy.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's kind of where I was aiming to go a little bit with it. And yeah, she hit right on the head. The tension, the stress, everything, 9 times out of 10 is all internal. That's the crazy part.
Yeah. I mean, even this last week when we had this big gig for the Pride event, and I was nervous. I always want to show up prepared and do a good job. That's just how I'm wired to be. But I was also thought at some point, it's not about me. It's just show up and create the best, most fun experience that can possibly happen. I mean, we didn't have a ton of rehearsals going into this, but we had enough that we knew the material pretty well. But it was always even if we screw up, as long as we don't act like we screwed up and we just continue to bring the fun and the party and the joy, that's what people are going to remember.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. The energy, the effort is what people feel more than anything else. Because I would definitely get caught up in that myself, being a musician or even a keynote speaker, which you are. I would get caught up in that all the time. Is all eyes are on me and I can't screw up, or else this and this and this. When people don't even probably know when you screw up, unless you let them know.
That's true.
Yeah, I took jazz guitar lessons for a while, and my instructor said, if you mess up, just hit the note again, and they'll think you meant to do it. I'm like, oh, that's how jazz works.
Yeah, now you made a new song.
Now we know.
Yeah, now you got a new song. Do you all have anything, Kenny? Go lightly before I hit her with the fast 5 that she probably isn't expecting.
I've got nothing.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, go for it, Leo.
Jen, did you have anything? Also, I like to be polite and make sure that there's nothing else you want to ask before I bombard you.
No,
Okay,
no,
cool,
you all
cool.
pulled a lot out of me here today. This has been fun.
All right, so now to pull the most out of you, we're about to do a fast five. So I love to ask my guests 5 questions, pretty much a short answer on all of them. And then after you ask those 5 questions, I need you to answer this question, which is the most important. If you could do what you already do, but on a massive stage, if you could give a keynote speech to anyone, let's say there's a stadium full of 3 to 5 million people, and you had to give them one message today, what would be the one thing that you want them to take away from the message that you had to give? What are you most passionate about, or what should people know? So after the fast 5, then that's what we're going to jump into.
Okay. All right.
Before we do that, again, do you want to tell the people where they can best find you? I don't know if that's social media, like you mentioned the YouTube earlier, but tell the people where to find you.
I'm mostly on Instagram at Brassy Broad Jen. That's pretty much where I'm hanging out and sharing songs. I'm on LinkedIn for you professional listeners. And on TikTok sometimes. So yeah, I'm pretty much in all the places at Brassy Broad Jen.
Okay, cool. We'll make sure to have that in the description for everybody to tap into. Alrighty, are you ready for the fast 5?
Bring it on.
Super easy softball questions, of course.
Okay.
Of course. Alrighty, number 1, what is your favorite place to eat? And if you can't think of a restaurant, you are more than welcome to give me a genre.
Well, we just had a picnic on the boat this weekend, so I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that is my favorite place to eat. Yeah.
That's a good choice.
Yeah, that's a good choice. That's a first too. What are your outrageous goals you're looking to accomplish this year?
I would love to have the #1 jiu-jitsu podcast within the next year.
Ooh. Let's help her out.
Claps for that.
I need all the help I can get with that.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
#1 jiu-jitsu podcast. Beautiful. Beauty in the gi. Done.
All right.
A very important question on this podcast. And this answer is critical. Okay. Just want you to know.
Okay. No pressure.
There's a lot weighing. No, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of weight on this answer. Can you cherish everyone?
I do my best. It's a practice.
It's a practice.
Fair.
Okay.
That's a great
I think it's
answer.
a practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good answer, by the way. That was a good answer.
I mean, in my heart, the answer is yes, but I also know in reality, when I get cut off in traffic, I'm not.
Yeah. Kenny, do you have anything to say to that, or we get to move on?
Jen's spot on.
Yes, I agree. I think we're all in agreement there. All right, who is your favorite musical artist?
Oh, that really depends on the day. Singer wise, because like I have it broken down.
I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure. I'll let you take it wherever you want. Yep.
I think singing wise, Linda Ronstadt. She has such a voice, and she could sing so many different genres. So I love her a lot. And guitar playing wise, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Buddy Guy, like a lot of the blues guys. And then, I do have my #1 all-time favorite is Tina Turner.
Oh,
yeah, she was my first concert in the 8th grade, and I've read her book Happiness. If you have not read that, it is a game changer about life philosophy. Like, she is so much more than the great legs and the powerful voice. I highly recommend that book.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Tina Turner.
Yeah. Rest in peace.
How's that for a short answer?
Yeah, you got me off track there. All right, last one before we give your keynote speech. Are you likely to pick truth or dare?
Oh, that depends on where I am. And who
Also
I'm
a good
with.
answer. That's probably the right answer.
Hey, that's true right there. That's true. Alrighty, and then our last question is: if you, Jen, were to give a keynote speech, you had 5 million people in the stadium, or maybe even more, what do you want them to know?
Do the thing. Don't wait. Because like we talked about earlier, tomorrow's not promised. So don't wake up one day and think, oh, what did I do with my life?
Perfect.
That's it.
Amen.
I love it. Always,
Beautiful.
It's so concise and to the point. I love it. Yeah, claps up for that.
Better than my 5 short answers.
Yeah, somehow that was shorter.
I just needed to practice.
I appreciate you coming on. This has been phenomenal to see all the things that you have done in your career, all that you're about to do. Thank you, thank you, thank you again. And like we always say, pursue excellence and cherish everyone. Peace. Wait. All right. You just enjoyed that episode. I know it because you've made it to this point. If you wouldn't do me and the fellas a favor, while you're joining us at our dinner table, you're having food, maybe you're on a run, wherever you're listening to the episode, please take the time, 1 second, hit like, subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. Peace.